Stop! The word cut through the bright delivery room so sharply that even the doctors froze. 12 specialists stood around Vivian Carter, the billionaire everyone was terrified to fail. Their hands hovered. Their faces were tight. One more wrong move could turn a crisis into a tragedy. Then 3 boys stepped into view near the doorway, 10-year-old triplets standing shoulder to shoulder, like they had practiced calm their whole lives. Elijah Reed, Miles Reed, and Jordan Reed, the Reed triplets, held their mother's hand for 1 second, then released it gently, eyes locked on the doctor's sequence. Elijah spoke first, respectful and steady. "Ma'am, please change the order. Adjust first, recheck, then proceed." Miles added quietly, "Not the current sequence. It adds stress." Jordan finished, calm as an adult. 10 seconds, please." Dr. Simone Brooks stared at them like logic had walked into the room, wearing a child's face, and Darius Carter's breath caught, because the triplets sounded certain, and the monitor proved they were right. "Mr. Hope fam, today I've got a wild one for you. A billionaire mom in a critical labor, and 3 10-year-old triplets who somehow saved the day. Get comfy, let's dive in." That morning, the sky over Atlanta looked normal. Blue, clean, quiet. But inside Northgate Women's Medical Center, nothing was normal. Northgate was the kind of hospital rich people used when they didn't want mistakes. The hallways smelled like money and antiseptic. The floors shined like mirrors. The nurses moved fast, but their voices stayed low, because today's patient was not just anybody. Her name was Vivian Carter. Vivian Carter was a billionaire, not the loud kind, the calm kind, the kind whose name didn't need an introduction in Atlanta's business world. She owned hospitals, buildings, and foundations that helped people who would never meet her. And now she was upstairs in a private delivery suite, dealing with a complicated labor that had already lasted too long. Downstairs, the front doors slid open again. A man walked in with the kind of quiet power that made people stand straighter without knowing why. Darius Carter, Vivian's husband, didn't rush. He didn't shout. He held his phone loosely in one hand and a small prayer book in the other, like he was balancing 2 kinds of control. A nurse stepped forward quickly. "Mr. Carter, we're ready to take you up." Darius nodded once. "No cameras," he said calmly. "No leaks, and no confusion." The nurse swallowed and nodded back. "Yes, sir." Behind her, a tall man in a dark suit appeared like a shadow that belonged to the building. This was Dr. Adrian Holt, the hospital's chief of medicine. He was respected, feared, and obsessed with reputation. Dr. Holt didn't smile. "This is a private case," he told everyone within earshot. "No media, no mistakes." Darius looked at him for a moment. His eyes were steady. "Just do your job," Darius said. Upstairs, the pressure was rising. Inside the private suite, Dr. Simone Brooks, Vivian's lead OB, moved like a woman fighting time with her hands. Dr. Brooks was brilliant and proud, known for solving the cases other doctors avoided. But this one was not bending. One doctor stepped out, another stepped in. 12 doctors rotated through the room over the hours. Specialists with clean coats, sharp voices, and confident eyes. They spoke in short sentences. They whispered in corners. They checked monitors. They changed plans. Still, nothing progressed safely. In the waiting area, Darius sat with his back straight. He didn't pace. He didn't complain. His silence was heavy, like a shield. Every few minutes, he looked up at the doors, then looked down again at his prayer book, as if calm was the only gift he could offer Vivian from the outside. Across town, in a very different kind of quiet, another woman paused in her kitchen and held the edge of her counter. Her name was Nia Cross. Nia Cross was also a billionaire, but she lived like someone who didn't need to prove it. She ran a tech empire that touched millions of phones and screens, yet at home, she was simply a mother. That morning, a sudden wave of sickness rolled through her body. She tried to breathe through it and pretend it was nothing. But 3 boys watched her closely. They were 10 years old: Elijah Reed, Miles Reed, and Jordan Reed. Calm boys, polite boys, the kind of boys who noticed details other people missed. Elijah, the quietest, tilted his head. "Mom," he said softly, "you're not okay." "I'm fine," Nia replied quickly, too quickly. Miles stepped closer, his voice steady. "Your hands are cold." Jordan didn't argue. He just picked up the car keys from the hook like it was already decided. "We're going to the hospital," he said, respectful but firm. Nia wanted to protest, but another wave hit, and she realized the boys were right, so she nodded once. "Okay," she said, "let's go." When they arrived at Northgate, the parking area was filled with black SUVs and silent men in suits. The air felt tense, like something big was sitting on the building. At the entrance, a woman stood off to the side pretending to scroll on her phone. Her name was Renee Lawson, an investigative reporter known for smelling a real story before it broke. She wasn't there for gossip. She was there because power always left footprints. Renee looked up as Nia Cross walked in with 3 boys beside her. She narrowed her eyes slightly. "Something is happening here," she murmured. Inside, Nia checked in, and the staff's faces changed the moment they recognized her name. A nurse straightened quickly. Another whispered, "That's Nia Cross." They guided her toward an elevator. The boys followed in silence, eyes moving, observing the building like students in a living textbook. The elevator rose smoothly. The numbers climbed. When the doors opened on the maternity floor, the hallway was bright and too quiet. Doctors stood in clusters. A nurse hurried past with supplies. A man in scrubs said something in a low, urgent voice that cut through the calm like a knife. "We're running out of safe options." Elijah's eyes sharpened. Miles went still. Jordan's hand tightened lightly around the strap of Nia's bag. And in that bright hallway, with power and fear hiding behind polite faces, the 3 boys listened, quietly, like they had just arrived exactly where they were needed. The following morning, Northgate Women's Medical Center still felt like it was holding its breath. The same polished floors, the same quiet voices, but the tension had grown heavier, like the building had not slept. On the maternity floor, Nia Cross sat in a private waiting area with a thin blanket over her lap. Her face looked composed, but her eyes were alert. She didn't like feeling weak in public. Billionaires were not supposed to look fragile. Across from her, the 3 boys sat like they belonged there. Elijah Reed, the quiet one, watched the hallway the way some people watched storms. Miles Reed, careful and practical, kept glancing at the nurse station and the doors. Jordan Reed, the most vocal, sat upright with his hands folded, respectful and ready. A nurse approached with a professional smile that was just a little too eager. "Mrs. Cross," she said softly, "we can move you to a more comfortable suite. We have—" Nia raised a hand gently. "Thank you, I'm fine here." The nurse hesitated, then nodded and walked away. But as she left, the boys noticed what adults didn't notice. Another nurse pushed a cart down the hall, fast. Extra supplies, emergency kits, sterile packs. Her steps were quick, her jaw tight, like she was trying not to show fear. Miles leaned slightly toward Elijah. "That's not routine," he whispered. Elijah didn't answer. He just watched the cart disappear toward a door marked Private Delivery Suite. Jordan stood up calmly and walked toward the nurse station, not rushing, not acting like a child trying to be seen. He waited until a nurse looked up. "Ma'am," Jordan said politely, "is there an emergency delivery happening?" The nurse blinked, caught off guard by his tone. "Sweetheart, go sit with your mum." "Yes, ma'am," Jordan said quickly. He didn't argue, he simply added, gently, We just want to know if the patient is safe." The nurse's eyes flicked around as if checking who could hear. Then she lowered her voice. "A high-profile patient is having complications." Jordan nodded once. "Thank you." He returned to the waiting area. Nia watched him carefully. "Jordan," she said quietly, "don't trouble people." "I'm not, Mom," he replied, calm, respectful. "I'm just listening." Down the hall, the private suite door opened and a woman stepped out like she had been carrying a heavy weight on her shoulders. This was Dr. Simone Brooks, Vivian Carter's lead OB, brilliant, respected, and used to being in control. Her hair was neatly tied back, but her face showed strain. She walked straight to the waiting area where Darius Carter stood near a window. Darius looked like he had been standing there for hours, tall, still, controlled. Dr. Brooks spoke low but direct. "Mr. Carter, we need a new approach." Darius didn't react dramatically. He simply looked at her. "Tell me the truth." Dr. Brooks exhaled. "We're trying everything we can safely do, but your wife's body isn't responding the way we expect." Darius's jaw tightened for half a second, then it relaxed again. "Do what you must," he said. "Just bring her through it." As Dr. Brooks turned back toward the suite, the boy's eyes followed her. Elijah leaned forward slightly, listening to the words drifting down the hall. Medical terms, timing, positioning, risk. He didn't flinch. He didn't look scared. He looked focused. Then something small happened. A nurse with kind eyes walked past the waiting area, her badge reading Patrice Coleman. She was older, experienced, the kind of nurse who had seen miracles and mistakes. As she passed, her gaze fell on the boys. She slowed. Her eyes moved to Elijah's face, then Miles, then Jordan. Her expression changed so fast it was almost invisible, like she had seen something that didn't belong in the present. Patrice's lips parted slightly. Her hand tightened around the file she was holding. Then she kept walking, but her shoulders were stiffer now, like her body had remembered something her mind didn't want to touch. At the far end of the hall, Dr. Adrian Holt appeared again. The hospital chief moved with authority, scanning the floor like a commander. He stopped at the delivery suite entrance and raised his voice just enough to carry. "No one comes near this room," he ordered. "No unnecessary traffic, no visitors. Do you hear me?" Several staff members nodded quickly. Nia pulled her blanket tighter. Darius didn't respond. Dr. Brooks disappeared behind the door. The hallway went quiet again. Jordan whispered, "They're scared." Miles nodded slowly. "They're running out of time." Elijah stood up, not dramatically, not like a child trying to play hero. He stepped forward just one pace, eyes fixed on the suite door, and spoke softly, so softly it almost sounded like a thought. "Sir," Elijah said, respectful and calm, looking toward Dr. Holt's direction, "if they do that next step now, it could make it worse." And in that bright hallway, the air changed, because the adults heard him. Minutes after Elijah spoke, the hallway stopped feeling like a hallway. It became a courtroom. Nurses slowed their steps. 2 doctors near the suite door turned their heads. Even Dr. Adrian Holt paused, as if he had just heard something that didn't fit his world. He looked at Elijah, really looked. "A child," Dr. Holt said coldly. "Go sit down." Elijah didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood still, calm, eyes steady. Miles stepped half a step closer, not aggressive, just present. Jordan kept his hands folded the way he had been raised. From the waiting area, Nia Cross tightened her fingers around her blanket. "Boys," she called softly, warning in her tone. Jordan turned his head slightly. "Yes, Mom," he replied, respectful. Then he looked back at Dr. Holt and spoke carefully. "Sir," Jordan said, "may we speak to a doctor who handles newborn care, just for 1 minute?" Dr. Holt's eyes narrowed. This is not a classroom." At that moment, the private suite door opened again, and Dr. Simone Brooks stepped out. Her face looked tighter than before. She walked straight to Darius Carter. Darius didn't ask how bad it was. His eyes already knew. Dr. Brooks lowered her voice. "Mr. Carter, we're reaching the point where every option carries a bigger risk." Darius inhaled slowly. He glanced at the door like he wished he could carry the pain for Vivian himself. Then he looked back at Dr. Brooks. "Tell me what you need," he said. Before Dr. Brooks could answer, a woman in light blue scrubs approached with a tablet tucked under her arm. She moved with calm confidence, like someone trained to manage fragile moments. This was Dr. Lena Whitaker, the neonatologist, specialist in newborn care, known for her sharp mind and her refusal to be impressed by titles. Dr. Brooks turned to her. "Lena, I need you close, in case we pivot." Dr. Whitaker nodded once. Her eyes scanned the hall and landed on the boys. Jordan stepped forward with permission in his posture. "Ma'am," he said politely, "we don't want to disturb, but we heard part of the plan." Dr. Holt's voice cut in. "Doctor, do not—" Dr. Whitaker lifted a hand, not rude, just firm. 30 seconds, she said to the boys. Elijah spoke first. His voice was quiet, but his words were arranged like steps. "If the next move is the same sequence again," Elijah said, "it may increase stress instead of releasing it. The timing is off. The position is off." Miles added, "Steady." "There's a safer order. Adjust first, then reassess, then proceed. Not proceed first." Jordan finished, respectful. "We're not saying we should do anything. We're saying, please check the sequence." Dr. Whitaker's eyes sharpened. She didn't smile. She didn't laugh. She turned to Dr. Brooks. "What did you plan next?" she asked. Dr. Brooks answered quickly. Dr. Whitaker's face changed, not with panic, but with realization. She pivoted toward the suite door. "Hold," she said. "Before the next step, confirm positioning and reassess. Now." Dr. Holt stiffened. "We don't take instructions from—" Dr. Brooks didn't wait. She was proud, but she was not reckless. She trusted results more than ego. She turned and went back into the suite with Dr. Whitaker beside her. Darius watched them disappear, his hands clasped like he was holding himself together. In the hallway, the boys stepped back immediately. No celebration, no drama, just silence. Minutes passed like hours. Then the suite door opened. A nurse walked out, eyes bright with relief. Her voice was low but shaking with gratitude. "She's stable," the nurse said. Darius closed his eyes for 1 second, like the world had finally allowed him to breathe. Behind him, Dr. Holt stared down the hall, stunned in a way he couldn't hide. He leaned toward Dr. Whitaker as she stepped out and whispered, almost to himself, "How did children just save the biggest case in this hospital?" By evening, Northgate's bright hallway no longer felt quiet. It felt watched, not by cameras inside, because Dr. Adrian Holt had warned everyone, but by the outside world that always found a crack to look through. It started small. A young staff member, standing near the vending machines, typed fast on a phone with trembling excitement. No faces, no names, just a sentence that sounded impossible. 3 10-year-old medical prodigies helped save a billionaire mother today. The post didn't stay small for long. It jumped from one screen to another like fire finding dry grass. Nurses saw it, orderlies saw it, people outside the hospital saw it, and in the lobby, the woman who had been pretending to scroll all day lifted her head. This was Renee Lawson, the investigative reporter. Renee wasn't the type to chase trends. She chased truth. She had built her name by digging under clean stories until the dirt showed. She read the post once, then twice. Her eyes narrowed. "Northgate doesn't leak unless something is already cracking," she murmured. Upstairs, Nia Cross rose from her chair, slowly. Her sickness had eased, but her instincts had sharpened. She wanted to leave quietly, the way she had come. No attention, no drama. But when she stepped into the hallway with the boys, people stared. Not rude stares, not mocking stares, the kind of stares that said, "We know you're connected to something big." A nurse passing by stopped, then smiled too quickly. "Those are the boys," she whispered to another staff member. Elijah Reed kept his eyes forward, calm. Miles Reed stayed close to his mother's side, polite. Jordan Reed nodded respectfully when someone greeted them, like a young man raised with manners. Nia tightened her jaw. "Keep walking," she said softly. They made it to the elevator. The doors opened, and for 1 second, Nia caught a glimpse down the hall, toward the private suite where the miracle had happened. Her eyes flicked there, then away, as if she refused to be pulled into someone else's storm. Inside the private suite, the lights were softer now. Vivian Carter lay resting, her breathing steady. She looked tired, but not broken. Even in weakness, she had a quiet strength that filled the room. Darius Carter sat beside her bed, like a guard who didn't sleep. His suit jacket was still on. His phone sat untouched on his knee. When Vivian's eyes opened, she didn't ask for praise. She didn't ask about money. She didn't ask who was to blame. She asked one calm question. "Who are those children?" Vivian said, her voice low but clear. Darius looked at her. "You remember them?" "I heard a voice," Vivian replied softly. A calm voice. Darius's face stayed composed, but something in his gaze tightened. "They showed up at the exact moment we needed a miracle," he said. "That doesn't sit right with me." Vivian blinked slowly. "Not everything good is planned," she said. "Sometimes it's placed." Darius didn't argue, but his mind had already moved ahead. His world was built on patterns, and today's pattern felt strange. Next morning, Northgate looked polished again, but under the shine, fear was moving. In the small records room, Nurse Patrice Coleman stood with a folder open in front of her, like she had been handed a truth too heavy for one person. Patrice was not new to hospital secrets. She had seen mistakes, she had seen cover-ups, but this file felt different, because this file had a name. Carter. Patrice turned one page, then another. Her eyes moved faster than her breathing. The neonatal transfer logs looked normal at first. Dates, times, baby ID tags, signatures. But then the pattern broke. A timestamp jumped backward. A tag number repeated twice. A signature appeared in a place it shouldn't. Patrice leaned closer, whispering as she read. "This doesn't match. This doesn't match." Her fingers slid to the back of the folder where older papers were clipped together. A sealed storage slip sat there, stamped and re-stamped like someone had been trying to bury it under official ink. She swallowed hard and opened the attached envelope. Inside was a thin sheet with typed lines that made her stomach drop. Triplet A/Triplet B/Triplet C, transfer authorized. Patrice stared at it, blinking slowly, as if the words might change if she waited. But they didn't. Out in the lobby, Renee Lawson was doing what she did best, standing quietly where people thought she wasn't listening. Renee had followed the 10-year-old medical prodigy's buzz overnight. The post had spread, then been deleted, then reposted by someone else. That meant there was fear behind it, and fear always meant a story. She had already pulled court databases and scanned old hospital news releases. In the middle of her search, she found something locked behind legal language, a court-protected settlement connected to Northgate from years ago. The details were sealed, but the date and department stood out. Neonatal transfer, VIP case. Renee's eyes sharpened. "So the miracle is just the front door," she whispered. What's hiding in the house? Upstairs, Dr. Lena Whitaker sat at a workstation in the newborn unit, reviewing routine records from the previous day. She wasn't hunting drama. She was doing standard follow-up for patients who had been in the emergency wing, especially a high-profile visit like Nia Cross. Dr. Whitaker tapped through system alerts calmly, then paused. A small flag blinked on the screen. She frowned. "That's strange," she murmured. The system didn't throw family match flags lightly. It only did that when genetic markers or linked records suggested an unexpected connection, usually in families already logged into the hospital network. Dr. Whitaker clicked deeper. Her expression tightened. At the same time, in a private recovery suite, Vivian Carter scrolled through her phone with slow, careful movements. She wasn't searching for attention. She was searching for quiet, but the internet didn't offer quiet. A photo appeared on her screen, blurry, taken from a distance in a hospital hallway. 3 boys standing beside a woman. The caption read, "The kids who helped save her." Vivian stared at their faces. Something moved inside her. Not fear, not excitement. Something deeper and older, like recognition without explanation, like her body remembered before her mind could catch up. She set the phone down and pressed her palm lightly against her chest. "Why do I know them?" she whispered. Beside her, Darius Carter watched her closely. Darius didn't like mystery. Mystery was where enemies lived. He leaned forward. "What is it?" he asked. Vivian hesitated. "Those boys," she said softly. They feel familiar." Darius's eyes narrowed. He stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city like he was measuring it. Then he made a decision. He pulled out his phone and typed one name: Marcus Grant. Marcus Grant was a private investigator known for discretion, the kind of man billionaires called when they needed answers without noise. When Marcus answered, Darius didn't waste time. "I need you to find out who those boys are," Darius said quietly, "and why my hospital looks like it's hiding something." Across town, in a glass and stone mansion that felt warm despite its size, Malcolm Cross sat at the breakfast table with Nia Cross and the boys. Malcolm was measured, disciplined, the kind of man who didn't panic in storms. But today he noticed something. Nia's phone had notifications she wasn't opening. The boys were quieter than usual, and outside their gate, a car had been parked too long. Malcolm looked at Nia and spoke in a low voice. "These people don't stare like that unless something is hiding," he said. Back in the records room, Patrice's eyes dropped to the bottom of the transfer paper. And there it was, a signature line. Her breath caught, because the name signed there was the one man who had ordered privacy yesterday, like a threat, Dr. Adrian Holt. Patrice's hands trembled slightly as she whispered, "No, not him." And in that moment, the miracle story stopped being about 3 boys and a saved delivery. It became something darker, something buried, something that had been waiting to come back. 2 days after the miracle at Northgate, the hospital felt quieter on purpose, not peaceful, controlled, like people were walking on glass and pretending it was carpet. In his corner office, Dr. Adrian Holt stared at a report he didn't want to read. His jaw worked slowly, like he was chewing anger without food. When his assistant knocked, he didn't say, "Come in." He just said, "What now?" "Mr. Carter is asking questions," she whispered. Holt's eyes hardened. "Tell him nothing," he said, "until I decide what he deserves to know." On the other side of the building, Dr. Lena Whitaker sat alone at her workstation, her finger hovering over the same blinking alert. Family match. Review required. Dr. Whitaker wasn't the kind of doctor who jumped to conclusions. She believed in proof, but she also believed in patterns, and this pattern didn't belong in a routine file. She clicked deeper. The system wasn't calling it a certainty. It was calling it a warning, a connection, a possibility, a question the hospital didn't want asked. In the recovery suite, Vivian Carter looked better than she had days ago, but something in her eyes had changed. Her body had survived the crisis. Her mind was now waking up to a different kind of discomfort. Darius Carter stood near the window again, phone to his ear, speaking in a voice so calm it sounded like politeness. "Marcus," he said, "I want names. I want records. I want the truth that hides behind smiles." Marcus Grant, the private investigator Darius hired, was a discreet man with a steady voice. Marcus was known for finding facts without leaving fingerprints, the kind of man who didn't gossip and didn't guess. "I already started," Marcus replied. "The 3 boys are listed as Elijah Reed, Miles Reed, and Jordan Reed. Age 10, they live with Nia and Malcolm Cross." Darius's face tightened. "The Crosses?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Billionaires too, and they're not messy people. This isn't a scandal family. It's a family. Darius went silent for a moment as if his mind was rearranging the city. Vivian, listening nearby, whispered, "So that's why the staff reacted to her." Darius nodded once. 2 powerful families in one building, he said, and a hospital that suddenly wants no questions. That same afternoon, Darius requested a private meeting, careful, respectful, no threats. It was framed as gratitude and concern, not accusation. In a quiet conference room, Malcolm Cross arrived first. Malcolm was tall, disciplined, and calm in a way that made people lower their voices around him. He didn't come with an entourage. He came like a man protecting a home, not a brand. Behind him walked Nia Cross, composed, elegant, her eyes sharp, and beside her, quiet and well-mannered, were the boys, Elijah, Miles, Jordan. They didn't look like children who were scared. They looked like children who were observing. Vivian stepped in with Darius. For a moment the room held its breath again, only this time it wasn't about medicine, it was about history. Vivian's eyes landed on the boys, and her expression softened in a way she didn't understand. She didn't reach for them. She didn't dramatize it. She simply spoke gently. "Thank you," she said, "for helping when you didn't have to." Jordan nodded respectfully. "You're welcome, ma'am." Elijah watched Vivian's face like he was reading a book with missing pages. Miles stood steady, hands at his side. Darius cleared his throat, controlled. "Malcolm," he said, "this may sound impossible, but we need clarity." Malcolm's gaze didn't flinch. "Say it," he replied. Before Darius could continue, Dr. Whitaker entered quietly. She had asked permission to attend because her name was already tied to the alert, and she refused to be part of silence. Dr. Whitaker placed a thin folder on the table. "I need to be careful," she said, but the system flagged a potential family compatibility match. Nia's brows drew together. "Match with who?" Dr. Whitaker met her eyes. "With Mrs. Carter's records." The room went still. Darius didn't shout. Vivian didn't cry. Malcolm didn't slam the table. The weight was too serious for theatrics. Darius spoke low. "We can do a discreet test," he said, respectfully, quietly, no headlines, no trauma, just truth. Malcolm looked at Nia. Nia looked at the boys. Jordan asked calmly, "Is this about why everyone's been acting strange?" Nia's voice stayed gentle. "We're going to confirm something," she said. "That's all." The test was arranged with care. No harsh scenes, no fear. Just professionals doing what professionals were trained to do. The results came faster than anyone wanted. Dr. Whitaker returned with the report in a sealed envelope. Her face was professional, but her eyes carried the heaviness of what she already knew. She set the envelope down in front of Vivian and Darius. Darius opened it slowly. He read, His hand tightened slightly. Then he looked up at Malcolm and Nia, voice steady but changed. "They're hers," he said quietly. "All three." Vivian didn't move for a long moment. Then she sat back in her chair, the air leaving her chest in a silent exhale, like her whole life had just shifted by 1 inch, and that inch was enough to break the floor. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost careful. "They told me my babies were gone. The morning after the DNA results, Atlanta felt louder outside, even though nobody had officially spoken. Inside both homes, the air was quiet in a different way. Not peaceful, heavy. At the Cross residence, Malcolm Cross stood by the kitchen window with his phone in his hand, not calling anyone, just holding it like a weight. Malcolm was the kind of man who believed discipline could solve most things. But this wasn't a business deal. This was family. Nia Cross sat at the table with a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. Her posture was calm, but her eyes kept drifting toward the hallway where the boys were finishing their breakfast, as if nothing had changed. That was the hardest part. The boys were still the boys. Elijah Reed folded his napkin neatly. Miles Reed put his plate in the sink without being told. Jordan Reed asked politely if he could go review his science notes before school. No drama, no tears, no panic, just quiet routine. Malcolm watched them, then spoke low to Nia. "If anyone thinks they can walk in here and collect children like luggage, they came to the wrong house." Nia nodded slowly. "We will not fight with anger," she said, "but we will not be bullied." Across town, in the Carter estate, Vivian Carter sat in a sunlit room wearing a soft robe, her hand resting on her stomach as if she was still reminding her body that she was safe. Vivian had always been elegant under pressure, but this truth was not pressure, it was a crack in time. Darius Carter stood near the bookshelf, reading the DNA report again, like a man hoping the words might rearrange themselves if he stared long enough. Darius was calm, but his calm had an edge now. He had built an empire by controlling outcomes, and yet the most important outcome of his life had been switched in a hospital hallway without his permission. "They knew," he said quietly. "Somebody knew." Vivian's voice came gentle but firm. "We will not turn this into a war in front of children." Darius looked at her. "Those are our sons." Vivian didn't deny it. She simply added, "And they are also someone else's home." Later that day, Darius requested another meeting, this time not at the hospital. No Northgate walls, no Dr. Holt's shadow. He chose a neutral place, a private office building with security and silence. Malcolm arrived first again, dressed simply, expression controlled. Nia came beside him, calm as ever. The boys came too, not because anyone wanted to drag them into adult pain, but because both families knew secrets grew teeth when children were left out completely. When Vivian entered, she didn't rush toward them. She didn't reach out like a stranger trying to grab love by force. She stopped a respectful distance away and looked at them like she was trying to memorize what life had stolen. Jordan nodded politely. "Good afternoon, ma'am." Vivian's throat moved once. "Good afternoon," she replied softly. "And thank you for your manners." Elijah watched her quietly. Miles gave a small, respectful nod. Darius spoke carefully. "We're not here to create chaos," he said. "We're here to create clarity." Malcolm's gaze stayed steady. "Clarity is fine," he replied. "But understand something. Our boys are not trophies. They are children." Darius's jaw tightened. "They are my blood." "And we have been their home," Malcolm said, calm but firm. Vivian stepped in before the temperature rose. "Listen," she said gently. "I want them to know the truth. I want to build a relationship the right way, slowly, safely, without ripping anyone apart." Nia's eyes softened slightly, but her voice stayed guarded. The truth matters, she said, but so does stability. Darius nodded once, though it cost him. We can do this privately, he offered. No headlines. As if the universe heard the word, Vivian's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced down. A message from an unknown number. If you expose the hospital, you'll learn what really happened to the other babies. Vivian's fingers went still. Darius noticed immediately. What is it? Vivian didn't answer right away. She looked up at the boys, then at Nia and Malcolm. Her voice stayed calm, but the air in the room changed. Someone is warning me, she said quietly. And it sounds like the hospital story is bigger than we think. Outside, somewhere in Northgate's administrative wing, Dr. Adrian Holt watched a security feed with his hands clasped behind his back, expression unreadable. Then he smiled, not a happy smile, a prepared smile, like a man who still had secrets. That night, after Vivian read the anonymous warning, she didn't sleep the way people usually slept. She lay still, eyes open, listening to the silence in her mansion, like it was speaking back. By morning, she had made a decision. Not a loud decision, a careful one. She called Nia Cross directly. No assistants, no lawyers. Just one mother speaking to another. I want you and Malcolm to come to my home, Vivian said softly. Not to argue, not to negotiate like business, to talk like people. There was a pause on the line. Then Nia answered, calm but guarded. We'll come, she said, but we're coming as parents. That's exactly why I asked, Vivian replied. That evening, the Cross family arrived with quiet security, no sirens, no drama. Malcolm stepped out first, scanning the property like a man who measured risk in seconds. Nia followed, composed, her hand lightly guiding the boys. Elijah Reed walked with his usual quiet focus. Miles Reed kept close, eyes observing. Jordan Reed nodded politely to staff, as if good manners were a rule that didn't change with big houses. Darius Carter met them at the entrance. His posture was controlled, but his eyes carried a storm. He wasn't angry at them. He was angry at the universe for letting another man raise his sons. Mr. and Mrs. Cross, Darius said, voice steady. Mr. Carter, Malcolm replied, respectful, firm. Vivian came down the stairs in a simple dress, her hair pulled back neatly. She looked like herself again, but softer at the edges. Thank you for coming, she said. Nia nodded. We're here. They sat in a bright living room with clean lines and quiet luxury. A fire crackled softly, not for warmth, but for atmosphere. The boys sat together on one side of the couch. They didn't fidget. They didn't whisper jokes. They watched adults the way students watched lectures. Vivian spoke first. I don't want this to become a tug of war, she said. I don't want anyone to treat them like property. Malcolm's eyes stayed on her. Good, he said, because we won't allow it. Darius inhaled slowly, then forced his voice calm. I agree with the principle, he said, though the words tasted hard. But I need you to understand what this feels like. Nia answered gently. We do understand, she said, because we were told our babies were gone too. That sentence landed like a stone in water. Vivian's face tightened. You were told the same thing? Nia nodded once. We didn't know until now, and we love them. That's the truth. Vivian looked toward the boys, her eyes softening again. I can see that, she said quietly. Jordan spoke respectfully, not interrupting, just adding to the air. Ma'am, he said, we want everyone to be okay. Vivian's throat moved. Thank you, she replied. Then Nia revealed what she had avoided saying in the hospital when eyes were everywhere. The boys have been in a private mentor program, she said calmly. Not for show, not for cameras, For years, they study medicine with supervision and strict rules. It's why they recognized what was happening at Northgate. Darius's jaw tightened. So you trained them? Nia met his eyes. We supported their gift, she corrected softly. We didn't turn them into something. They already were. Vivian exhaled slowly, understanding something painful and beautiful at the same time. If the boys hadn't been raised in that steady home, they might not have been there to help her. The miracle she needed had been shaped by the life another family gave them. Darius looked away for a second, fighting the jealousy that rose like heat. Then he looked back and forced restraint, because Vivian's hand touched his wrist gently, reminding him of their promise. Across the city, Renee Lawson sat in her apartment with her laptop open, reviewing the sealed settlement she had found. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Stop digging. If you publish, you'll lose everything. Renee stared at the message, then at the screen. Her eyes didn't soften. They sharpened. Back in Vivian's living room, the talk continued. Slow, careful, heavy with truth. No shouting, no threats. Just two families standing at the edge of a cliff, trying to build a bridge with words. And somewhere behind all of it, unseen but present, the hospital's secrets waited, because the warning had not been a bluff. It had been a reminder. Somebody was still protecting what really happened. 2 days after the meeting at Vivian's home, the first headline finally broke through the cracks. It wasn't the full truth, not yet, but it was enough to shake the city. Renee Lawson published a careful piece that didn't name the boys, didn't show their faces, and didn't turn children into spectacle. She focused on one question. Why was Northgate so desperate to control the story of a miracle delivery? Within hours, phones started ringing in places that had been quiet for years. At Northgate, Dr. Adrian Holt stood in front of his office window, watching reporters gather near the entrance like birds sensing something wounded. His face stayed calm, but the muscles in his jaw moved like he was grinding down panic. "This is how it starts," he muttered. Downstairs, Nurse Patrice Coleman sat in her car, with both hands on the steering wheel, not driving. Patrice was not a reckless woman. She was not looking for fame. But she had reached the point where silence felt like violence, even when nobody touched anyone. She looked at the file folder on her passenger seat. Carter, the transfer sheet with Triplet A/Triplet B/Triplet C, and Holt's signature at the bottom like a stamp of power. Patrice whispered to herself, "If I keep this, I become part of it." She stepped out of the car and walked into the hospital with steady steps. In a private conference room away from cameras, Patrice met with Marcus Grant, the investigator Darius hired. Marcus didn't push her. He didn't intimidate her. He simply sat and listened like a man who understood that truth came out better when it wasn't forced. Patrice placed the folder on the table. "This isn't everything," she said quietly. "But it's enough to prove the hospital lied." Marcus opened the file carefully. His eyes moved over the lines, the tags, the dates that didn't match. He didn't react with shock. He reacted with focus. "This is a cover-up," he said. Patrice nodded, throat tight. "It started as a mistake," she added. "But it didn't stay a mistake. Someone decided it was better to hide it." That afternoon, Marcus met with Vivian and Darius in a private office. Vivian sat composed, her face calm, but her eyes were sharper than before. Darius stood behind her chair like a silent wall. Marcus laid out the facts cleanly. The Carter triplets were marked lost due to a paperwork switch during a VIP neonatal transfer, he said. But it wasn't just sloppy. Records were adjusted. Vivian's voice stayed steady. "And the crosses?" Marcus nodded. "They were told their babies were gone too. That's how the swap held. 2 grieving families, 1 hospital, 1 lie." Darius's hands clenched slowly. "Who signed off?" Marcus slid one paper forward without saying the name. Vivian saw it first. H-O-L-T. Her lips parted slightly, then closed, not because she was surprised, because some part of her already knew. Across town, Malcolm and Nia Cross sat at their dining table in silence after Marcus shared the same truth with them. Malcolm's face was controlled, but his eyes looked darker. "So we were both robbed," Malcolm said quietly. Nia nodded once. "And we both still raised children with love," she replied. "That part can't be erased." At Northgate, Dr. Holt called a private meeting with hospital legal counsel. The man who arrived wore an expensive suit and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His name was Evan Price, and he specialized in making problems disappear politely. Evan spoke smoothly. "Two billionaire families," he said. "This is not a lawsuit. This is a disaster." Holt's voice turned cold. "Contain it." Evan nodded. "We offer a settlement, quiet money, strong non-disclosure. We remind them the world can be ugly if they go public." Holt's eyes flicked toward the door, as if he expected someone to be listening. "Do it." That same evening, Vivian received the offer. So did Malcolm and Nia. The numbers were massive. The silence was priced like luxury. Vivian didn't smile. "They think pain has a dollar amount," she said. Darius's voice was low. "They think we'll choose money over our sons." Malcolm's reply, sent through Marcus, was simple. "We choose truth." As the story spread, public opinion split. Some people defended Vivian, some defended the Cross family, some blamed both for being rich enough to fight at all. And the hospital tried to stand tall in the storm, issuing clean statements with dirty fingerprints. Then Marcus found something that shifted the ground again. A sealed security video from years ago had been archived in an off-site system. The file name matched the night of the neonatal transfer. Marcus watched it. The footage was grainy but real. A cart, a hallway, a nurse moving fast. Then, right at the moment the cart reached the transfer point, the screen glitched. The final 30 seconds were missing. Deleted. Not lost. Deleted. Marcus leaned back slowly, the silence in the room turning sharp. "Someone didn't just cover a mistake," he said quietly. "Someone covered a decision." 3 mornings after Marcus discovered the deleted 30 seconds, the city stopped pretending this was a private problem. It had become a public wound. Northgate's lobby was filled with reporters and quiet security. Outside, cameras waited like they had been fed. Inside, lawyers moved in smooth circles, trying to keep the air from catching fire. In a downtown courthouse that didn't care who was rich, Judge Alana Pierce took the case into a private family hearing. Judge Pierce was known for one thing. She didn't let adults turn children into trophies. Her voice was steady, her eyes sharp, and she did not bend for money. Vivian Carter arrived first with Darius beside her. Vivian looked composed, but her hands were clasped tight in her lap, like she was holding herself together. Darius wore his calm like armor, but he didn't speak unless spoken to. Malcolm and Nia Cross arrived next with the boys. Malcolm's posture was firm and protective. Nia's face was calm, but her eyes stayed on the boys, like she was guarding them with silence. Elijah sat straight, quiet and observant. Miles stayed steady, hands folded. Jordan nodded respectfully d'Alofoi when the judge greeted them, the way he had been taught to greet adults. Judge Pierce looked at both families and spoke plainly. "No sudden separation," she said. "No handover like property. These are children, not assets. Any plan that creates shock will be rejected." Darius's jaw tightened. Vivian lightly touched his wrist, and he breathed out slowly. Judge Pierce continued, "We will build a child-first transition. Shared time, shared routines, a calm schedule, no public statements using the children's names. And any therapy support will stay private and respectful. Your wealth does not buy shortcuts. Malcolm nodded once. Thank you, he said quietly. Nia's voice was gentle but firm. That is all we want, she said. A plan that doesn't break them. When the judge asked if the boys wanted to speak, the room went still. Not because anyone feared them, but because everyone realized children sometimes said the purest truth. Jordan spoke first, respectful and calm. We don't want anyone fighting, he said. We want the truth, and we want everyone to be okay. Miles added quietly, we can spend time with both families, slowly. Elijah looked at Vivian for a moment, then at Nia. His voice was soft but clear. We don't want to be used, he said. We want to be loved the right way. Vivian's eyes softened. She didn't reach out. She didn't dramatize it. She simply nodded like she had just been given instructions for how to hold something precious. After the hearing, Vivian and Nia stood in a quiet hallway away from cameras. For the first time, there was no legal language between them. Just two mothers facing the same robbery in different ways. I'm sorry, Vivian said softly. Not for the truth, for the pain. Nia nodded slowly. I'm sorry too, she replied, because loving them didn't protect us from this. They stood in silence, and in that silence, a fragile respect formed. Outside the courthouse, Darius and Malcolm finally spoke without lawyers nearby. Darius's voice stayed low. We fight the hospital, he said, not the children. Malcolm held his gaze. Agreed, he replied, no matter how hard it gets. That afternoon, Northgate announced Dr. Adrian Holt was being temporarily suspended pending investigation. He appeared on a short statement video looking calm, almost offended, as if accountability was an insult. When cameras stopped rolling, Holt's lips curled into a small smile. Not relief, confidence, because he knew something others didn't. That same night, Marcus Grant met Darius and Vivian in a private office and placed a thin ledger on the table. It was old, hidden behind administrative filings, and stamped with off-site storage codes. This was not supposed to be found, Marcus said. Darius opened it slowly. Names, dates, transfers, VIP notes written in clean handwriting, and one name that didn't belong to Northgate staff. Vivian's stomach tightened. Who is that? She whispered. Marcus's voice turned quieter. Someone powerful, he said, outside the hospital. Then Marcus's phone rang. He answered once, listened, and his face changed. He looked at Vivian. Mrs. Carter, he said carefully, we found something else. Vivian's breath caught. What? Marcus held her gaze. The swap wasn't an accident, he said. It was ordered. Hello, fam. Did you enjoy the story? If you did, drop your favorite character in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you'll be the first to know when Season 2 drops. This is Mr. Hope. See you in the next video.